Empowerment. You probably heard that word way too often, and often you heard it in the wrong context. Many companies, many organizations claim that they practice empowerment with their employees. However, looking into reality, as we probably all know from real world experience, the reality often looks slightly different than the marketing material companies put out there. And the reason why we do this podcast episode with this topic is that not only I had an experience where I honestly thought this goes beyond anything I could believe, but also I received quite a number of emails about it where people ask different questions about how do you practice empowerment, what are difficult challenges you have, and how can you overcome practicing empowerment, but people doing mistakes, while managers tend to normally punish any mistakes so no one makes any more decisions, so you lose empowerment by people doing mistakes. And of course, these are all valid and reasonable questions. So let's talk about that. There's a reason why I told you something happened which went way beyond anything I could ever believe. I am now in London. I'm recording this while I'm sitting here in London in my place. And just a couple of days ago, I went to the cinema with Jack. Jack is a good friend. He's a manager at a well-known LGBTQIA plus community night venue, one of the largest, if not the largest, in Europe. And we went to watch Avatar. Avatar is a new movie which is 3 hours long. So, of course, when you go for a 3 hours long movie, what do you do after you purchase the tickets? You, of course, will take something to drink and something to eat into the cinema. If you don't like something to eat, you at least take something to drink. Because let's face it, you don't want to dehydrate in 3 hours and then sit in the middle of a cinema and then have to walk out in the middle of the film, which is never a great experience for anyone around you. So we queued for a while. We were there very much on time because I like to be in the cinema on time. I know this sounds horribly German, as you can hear by my charming accent. I am German, but I also like to watch the trailers. They give me good ideas. I often go to the cinema. I'm a big movie and cinema fan. I'm watching between 40 to 80 movies a year. So it's one of my very big hobbies to go to the movies and watch films in the cinema. This time, the experience was quite special. So we queued, and when it was our turn, the person behind the counter said that, because I then ordered my menu, which was a bit of a chocolate to eat and a Coke to drink, and Jack ordered popcorn and a Coke to drink. And then the person behind the counter said, well, there's a problem. This is the last Pepsi paper cup to serve you Pepsi in. And we said, that's not a problem. We are perfectly fine that you take any other cup. Take one of the slushy cups or one of the other plastic cups you have there. It's the same size. I don't care about the branding. And then the person said, no, that is not possible. And while I was completely astonished about the answer, telling me it's not possible with no reasoning behind it, I said, do you honestly prefer to lose customers completely? Because, of course, I would rather have left and get my money back for the ticket than sitting dehydrated in a 3 hour long movie. Jack, who works in hospitality, as I said, then asked for the team lead. Team lead came, was escalated up to the manager, took forever, and then the manager did the so amazing decision that in a really big exception, it is okay to get a Pepsi in a slushy paper cup. Wow, what a moment. I was very surprised that The Guardian didn't write about this next day. And I honestly thought, how little empowerment can organizations practice that this is the case? And this is just one example out of many. I could tell you about organizations, public transport, IT services. I'm not even talking about the public sector, where you are walking from one person to the next, and they always say, I can't decide this, I can't decide this, I can't decide this. And of course, you don't want to be the person who says, can I speak to the manager frequently? However, when organizations tend to keep practicing the no one decides anything anymore, you shouldn't be surprised that your customers prefer other options, meaning watching movies from home or ordering online rather than going to your store. So we have to talk about why is there so little empowerment at the moment? Do you really prefer to lose customers over giving empowerment to people? And of course, if you want entrepreneurial thinking, which meanwhile is in there in every single job ad that you see on the internet, how do you expect people to have entrepreneurial thinking while at the same time they are just full of fear-making in the state? And of course, they don't make any decisions when they fear they could make mistakes. So how important is empowerment? And yes, we now want to look into how to do it better. And I agree, there are many problems on management level. We have managers who are addicted to control, who give little to no empowerment to absolutely anyone. And there are many managers who self-justify their position by simply saying, oh, look, I am so busy. Anyone asks me all the time, which is not productive work. You simply deny to give empowerment to anyone, which is nothing else than having a job that no one needs. And at the same time, these managers are often very open to sanction people who make the tiniest mistakes. And of course, they don't promote behavior where people take accountability or responsibility. So how to do it better? There's one model which I'd like to recommend to you, and that's the so-called RACI model, RACI. Every letter stands for a certain word. R for responsible, A for accountable, C for consulted, I for informed. So when there's any task to do, or you have any process guideline or a process handbook, I recommend you to use these 4 letters. I know that the model can be extended by a couple of letters. We're going to talk about the base model today. These 4 letters will guide you through the beginning of your process. The C and the I are the easier ones. So C means consulted. Someone is asked about something and gives you an advice. I means informed. So, for example, you say, when you send this email out, put me in CC. That will be informed. Or when you do this, please inform me that you've done that. Easy. The responsible and accountable bit is the tricky one, because often these words are used in the completely wrong way. I often see people who say, I am responsible for XYZ because I'm a manager. And that is not correct. When you are a manager, you are accountable. You have to deliver the overall result. When you say you are responsible as a manager and your employee, your team member is accountable, you do it exactly the wrong way. And when you now say, oh, that is groundbreaking, and no, it's not. Peter Drucker wrote about reversed accountability in the 1970s. And still we face organizations 50 years later who didn't get the idea. Managers and executives are accountable, which means they are liable with everything they have, including their jobs, when things go wrong. They get the big bucks and the big money, the big quid into their account when things go right, including promotions and the praise. Of course, you should praise your employees and team members as well. However, having the accountability has a lot of benefits, but of course it comes with risks. And by the way, that is the reason why you get paid more. It is exactly the reason why you get paid more. Being responsible means that someone gives you a certain task, and then when you should have been professionally onboarded and trained for the task, then it's your job to do the task. However, when it goes wrong, one thing that is not possible, and this aspect I very often see with bad leaders, they celebrate themselves when things go right, and they talk down to employees and team members when things go wrong. And that's not possible. Accountability means you celebrate when it goes right, and you take the accountability when it goes wrong, and you put yourself in front of your people, especially when it comes to criticism. Responsible means you give people tasks, and they should be professionally trained to do the task, and then you can expect that they do the task properly. Very important, accountability cannot be delegated. You cannot delegate accountability. As soon as you do that, someone else should do the job you do. And I know this sounds very harsh, but we often see that managers and executives don't get the general idea of how to lead people properly. When you do not give any jobs to people and allow them to make decisions, you should not be surprised that you never have a talent. You will never have a talent development in your organization. It simply means that you will have people who want to develop in a certain direction. You say no, and then they work in a very narrow frame which you set for them. And as soon as they see they want to escape the frame and you don't give them the chance, they will leave the organization and work somewhere else. Also, when you don't allow people to practice empowerment and make decisions by themselves, it means that you have a very high key person risk. Key person risk means as soon as this person isn't there, no one knows what to do. And because no empowerment is in place, no one is going to decide anything, and the business comes to a standstill. And that normally means there is no revenue, no profit, no business. So check in your organizations very quickly. Are there key person risks? How do you mitigate them? How are you able to cover people when they are not there or unable to work? And of course, empowerment is the first step to make people able to do decisions on their own. Of course, when you now say, hey, some managers are not great in my organization, always distinguish between two different aspects. One is a bad manager. Two is a bad manager due to the fact that he never got professionally trained to be a manager. There are unfortunately numerous organizations who decided to make people leaders, managers, or executives and say, oh, this whole leadership training, oh no, we don't need that. People learn it on the job. You will figure it out somehow. Others figure it out as well. This only worked during a time where talent was not scarce because people were willing to accept management and executive misconduct up to a very high level. Today, people simply say, you know what? I quit and I get a new job around the corner within 24 hours. Thank you very much. So you need to train your people professionally to be leaders. No one can figure it out just by doing it. And by the way, just think of other jobs where people would say someone is going to figure it out on the job. When you next time have a toothache, would you go to a person that figures it out on the job how to repair your teeth? Probably not. So, summing this up, what should we do? Talent development relies on giving people the right to make decisions. Of course, you have to professionally train them and professionally onboard them, but then they have the right to make decisions, even when you disagree with their decisions. You might have a different opinion, but the reason they develop themselves is they have the right to make decisions in the frame you set them and the frame you trained them for. They have the right to make a decision on their own. This is how they develop. And of course, you can only expect entrepreneurial thinking when people are allowed to take risks. And by the way, when things go wrong, because some people will now say, well, when people take risks, sooner or later, there will be an error or a bad decision. Correct. I agree with you here. As soon as people make decisions that are not great, you have to talk to them. Don't go for the ultimate ratio for the last option and fire them immediately, because then you just doubled the problem. First, you are known as a very bad employer. Second, you never trained them properly. And third, they know as soon as you make a mistake, you just get fired. So no one will make any decisions anymore. Business again comes to a standstill and also will be known by customers as a very stiff, non-agile business. And by the way, when you say, oh, but in our business, it's also different and we like to have 4 people with every decision that have to sit together on anything, well, then just do that. But please stay away from talking about empowerment. Don't talk about vision, mission, and values and whatnot. And please never, never on planet Earth or at any point in time given, use the word agile. Simply say, we are a bit like the public sector, just a bit slower and a bit more boring. That's at least the honest way to tell people what you are. So as soon as you see that risk were taken and something went wrong, you sit down and you have a talk. You talk about what went wrong, why did it go wrong, and how can it be done better in the future. And I give you a real-world example of what went wrong in the recent past. And one of these examples went viral on the internet. There was a leader, and the leader had an idea. There was a raffle for New Year's Day. So people had to work on January 1st and 2nd, which is, of course, for some people, not the greatest days to work, especially in hospitality. So he said, for the people who are here at the beginning of the year, there's a raffle and you can win prizes. Sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah, until you see what was in the raffle. So one employee took one of the tickets out of the bag, opened the ticket, and it said, you won an extra 10 minutes break. If you think that this is bad, wait for the conditions that apply that you can take the 10-minute break. The break has to be announced 24 hours in advance. It cannot be added to your other breaks. It is invalid after 30 days, so you have to take it in January. You cannot have this break together with others. And the 5th point said, choose wisely, which is a mixture of a threat or a bad advice. I don't even know what to say to that. And of course, when you have such a raffle, some manager might have had a good idea of a raffle might be motivating, but not a raffle like that. And then you have to sit down with someone, ask them for their train of thought, then tell them how the perception of employees were, what happened, and how to do it better in the future. This is how you develop people. No one on planet Earth was a born leader or became a leader just by showing up and being perfect. Absolutely no one. And of course, At the end, there might now be some people and say, okay, look, we have an organization which has some challenges with empowerment. Can I ask some questions? And yes, you can. There are always 3 steps I recommend you to do at the end of this podcast. Step number 1, if there are any questions or you have suggested topics or ideas or feedback, and thank you very much, by the way, for the very positive feedback on New Year's Day, which I received. We're now in the 4th year with the podcast. I am very happy how it's going. We have multiple top rankings every week. Thank you very much for that. If you have anything that you'd like to tell me or chat with me, just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and we take it from there. And also, if you want to know more, there's always more information available. Just go to expert.nb-networks.com. Every Wednesday morning, there is free access to everything I published in writing or this podcast or anything else, no matter where. Free access, but only via this means. expert.nb-networks.com. Put your emails in there, and every Wednesday morning you receive an email. It's 100% content, ad-free guarantee. And last but not least, step number 3, apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will be able to see the positive benefits of it. I'm looking forward to seeing you implementing these steps in your organization. Let me know if you need help. I'm always happy to help you on the way. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.